you, Sandy. That was a very complete introduction. And thanks everybody for coming. It's great to be here at the Guns. And we're going to be talking about co-creation of knowledge today. And first I want to acknowledge my team with me working at the Institute for Agroecology, or Emily Baker, who's probably online. Gabriela Buccini, raise your hand, please. Maya Carrasco. And absent, my co-director, Colin Anderson, of course. So as Sandy mentioned, I work with the Institute for Agroecology. We are 2 years old officially. Hi, Taylor.
Hi, sorry.
But I always like to say at least 12 years in the making. So after the Gun, we were like the next institute that carried this wave of new institutes. I think now we are 7. And we do have a great 2-year report. If you're interested in checking out what we've been doing in these last 2 years, please go to the website and you can see it there. Hi, Josh.
Sure.
And co-creation of knowledge is really important to our institute. So I'm going to tell you a couple of things about the institute. One is we have this aspirational approach to agroecology that is transformative, and thinking about how we can really use this way of doing things with agroecology, or this approach, to change our food systems to ones that are ecologically sound and socially just. And transdisciplinarity is a big part of how we do those things. So thinking about academic disciplines, but also other forms of knowledge. And we want to bring and try to integrate or weave, and I'm not using integrating that much when it comes to co-creation, more like weaving feels better. Because a lot of times knowledge systems come together, they don't necessarily merge, but they interact and weave. And we have 3 pillars that guide our work, and one of them is co-creation of knowledge. So it's a very important approach that we think about a lot at the Institute for Agroecology. So to start, I think it's good to define what a knowledge system is. Knowledge systems can be defined in a variety of ways. So this is just one definition that I like. And I gotta say that I looked a lot for definitions in different fields, and this one resonated the most. So it includes practices, routines, structures, mindsets, values, and cultures affecting what and how knowledge is produced and used, and by whom. Some concrete examples. So indigenous knowledge is one that we hear about a lot. We don't hear that much about embodied knowledge, but martial arts, for example, represent a form of embodied knowledge. Western science is a knowledge system, and this perhaps the strongest and most well-known and with the most power and reputation right now in the world. And spiritual knowledge, for example, is another type of knowledge system. And there are others too. In agroecology, we've had this, we could say we've embraced this approach of diálogo de saberes in Spanish, or dialogue of knowledges, for quite a long time now, because a lot of the people that started in agroecology, the pioneers, were studying indigenous agriculture. And when they were studying it, and most of them looking at the ecological mechanisms behind some of the indigenous agricultural systems, they found that they wanted to learn from the people that were actually practicing them, not studying them, but practicing them. In order to do that, you had to switch a little bit. You couldn't come in with a scientific language, but you really had to, language and knowledge, but you really had to open up and see how you could have this dialogue with peoples that were practicing, but seeing the world in a very different way. So for example, a lot of indigenous agricultural systems have cosmovisions attached to them. And being open to that and being able to talk about it has become really important for us in agroecology. So it's a horizontal and respectful exchange of knowledge between different systems, worldviews, or cosmovision. And one important thing to say about diálogo de saberes is you can just have a conversation with someone, like nothing has to come out of it. It's just a conversation. You go your own ways, and maybe use it, maybe you don't use it, but you had that. Or maybe you have this conversation with someone and it just blows your mind. And you're like, I really need to bring this type of knowledge into what I do because I find it really useful or important or what. So participatory action research is also very important to the Institute. So we're going to do a participatory exercise. If you all have cell phones, I'm going to invite you to take that QR code and to share with me 3 words that represent co-creation of knowledge to you. And the way you're going to do it is you put a word and then you submit it. It'll let you submit 3 words. So if you can do that, we'll revisit it a little bit later in the presentation. Okay, so if you're done, I'm going to ask you to discuss with the person next to you what your words were, and to pay attention to where the words similar, different, aligned. So just the person next to you, let's just make it easy. Thank you for engaging in a very quick, maybe a little superficial dialogue aside. You just shared your own knowledge with somebody else. So I wanted to do that to make it interactive. Also, something cool is coming later, but also because I wanted to differentiate between a dialogue of knowledges, which might just be a conversation, to more explicitly think about co-creation of knowledge, which the idea is that when you bring 2 knowledge systems together that are different, you intentionally create something maybe different. Like you say, you know, we have this problem that we want to solve. I'm an engineer and I'm a social scientist. Can we like talk about how to bring our very different disciplines together to solve this? And then we do a socio-engineering approach, something like that. The creation of knowledge has become really important to agroecology. These are the most recognized 13 principles of agroecology. They came out of a very intensive process by the high-level panel of experts from the World Committee on Food Security in 2019. And the idea was to provide a guide for people interested in doing agroecology that was transdisciplinary and at different scales, agroecosystems, food systems. And this is something that you can use to see if a process is engaging deeply with agroecology, which principles are they engaging with the most? And one of them is co-creation of knowledge. So I just wanted to share that. It has become foundational in agroecological world around the world. And that's part of why it is also really important to us at the Institute. So a couple of important considerations for both diálogo de saberes and co-creation of knowledge. And this is coming out of a knowledge review that Emily Baker is leading. I asked her, you know, have you found, because they've been reading a lot of papers, Gabriela is also doing it, and is something coming out to you that I should mention to the audience in terms of what you're finding in the literature, and you can see some of the sources here. But a couple of things, like if you want to engage, and this is more for co-creation, but I think that it does apply to diálogo de saberes too, is that consideration for actors' coalitions. So how can people come together? Somebody said, I can't remember if it was last year or this year, that if you're not uncomfortable in a coalition, then you're not in a coalition. So usually coalitions bring a certain enough difference so you're going to be discomfort. If not, you're more in a group that has a very similar point of view, right? Also that you can't just bring it into a process later on. You want to bring it into a process from the onset. And that's very important for us to do research where we might be interested in co-creation and kind of say, oh, we'll just do it in the 3rd year of the 5-year grant. It's probably not going to work. Clarity in roles and responsibilities. So it moves really quickly into interpersonal relationships and people skills, I feel. And the last one, shared language. And there's an asterisk, and Emily had given me another explanation there. I think this one is really important. We've also been using it as a part of when you want to engage in agroecological transition. That includes different types of actors, that you have to understand each other. And many times we're all coming in with our own language. So figure out what transdisciplinarity means, figure out what knowledge means, figure out what practices or agroecology means. So you have to generate a language that everybody who's participating is going to understand, which I have participated in research processes where that is not the case. People are using language that some of their team members don't really quite understand, but we're too proud to actually say it. So, you know, these are more about affective and interpersonal dimensions. So power dynamics to me is one of the most important ones. When we have the co-creation of knowledge that we engage with a lot is between people like me who have been trained in Western science, who want to work with an indigenous community. They have their own knowledge, but maybe they are resource poor, maybe they have a different kind of education, they don't have facilities. And I'm coming in with more economic power, the power of my education, etc. So these power dynamics are really important, because if you don't break them enough, then you're not going to have horizontal co-creation, right? So one party might remain timid, maybe not share their knowledge enough. And this is one of the reasons we've been interested in co-creation of knowledge, because a lot of people are saying that they're doing it, which is great, but we wanted to bring like more of a deeper critical perspective on what does it really mean. And some of these others are, again, more interpersonal, interculturality, interpersonal dynamics, humility. It's really hard to open up to a different type of knowledge than the one you bring if you don't have humility, right? If you're already coming and saying Western science is it, and whatever you're going to tell me is going to be not as important or not as valid, is really hard. So that's a really hard thing to do, because, you know, our lived experience kind of makes us feel that we're doing things the right way, right? And finally, and this super key about creating something new, is trust. Because, you know, why am I going to do something with you if I'm not sure that it's going to benefit me? You know, why are we going to do this co-creation process if you're the only one benefiting? And if you're interested in the power dynamics, some really good work has been done by Sheila Jasnoff and others in the field of science and technology studies that really address this, like the politics, the power of knowledge, in a broader sense, not just for agriculture. So I thought I would give you an example of co-creation of knowledge that I think is great and really represents what I would aspire to do as a researcher coming in and working with people. And this is a project in Bolivia with the nonprofit organization called Prosuco. And they have been working with Bolivian Aymara farmers, indigenous, on this Japuchiri notion. So Japuchiri means wise farmer in Aymara. And the idea was to, and actually Amaya, where are you, Amaya? Amaya's over there. Amaya did her dissertation with Prosuco, with this organization, on a different project. But we're hoping to return and use the Japuchiri as one of our case studies in our research process. But the idea is that there are these wise farmers that have this very keen ecological knowledge that they say has been passed on for generations, where they can predict weather based on observation of nature. Things like if a certain plant is growing at a certain place in the river, it's going to be a wet year. Or birds are nesting in a certain area versus another one, it's going to be a dry year, etc. So these are observations that they have. And what the Japuchiri project has done is take those observations and integrate them with meteorological data that then gets brought together and with people from several universities, including an American university, they go into these forecasting models. And so it's a very interesting way of bringing different types of knowledge to co-create forecasting and climate change adaptation strategies for the Japachitis, for the Bolivian farmers. The other really cool thing that they've done that I would say is like something different and new that didn't exist before is they created this Pachagrama. So Pacha is that Mother Earth, Pacha, yes, Mother Earth. But instead of Mama, so Pachamama is Mother Earth, is Pachagrama, Pachagram. And it's a way of farmers keeping track of weather behavior phenomena across the year. So this is the month and the year, and the 30 days of the month, and this is snowing, rainfall, it was cloudy, it was sunny, this is frost, winds, the state of the crop. So you would do it for one crop, so in this case potatoes, and some descriptions here, growth stages, and some management. And so people are documenting here, in this day it was cloudy, or there was a snowstorm or whatever. And again, there's some people, you can imagine that some people probably do it every day and they're really into it, and some people are like every other week. But some of this information is also brought into some of that modeling and forecasting because it's daily. And so you can imagine it's also incredibly localized. Like you can't like overlap it. It will work for a very small region or space in time. So one of the motivations of going deeper into co-creation of knowledge is the fact that it's gotten really popular. And in the last, I would say 3 years, I've been noticing that I will go and interact with funders or organizations like the Agroecology Coalition, which is a huge network of 428 members, including governments. We are a member of it, and others. And a lot of people are talking about co-creation. And so to me, I started to wonder, I wonder how their understanding co-creation of knowledge in agroecology has compared to me. And I wonder how it's working out. We're always I'm usually thinking about how is it working out for farmers? Like I understand for me saying that it's co-creation work, and I wanted to mention funders because funders are interested in this. The Global Alliance for the Future of Food is a cluster of funders looking into food systems transformation. What is it in the ground, and how are the different actors when you think about farmers, researchers, policymakers, and others understanding it? Is it the same kind of understanding? Are people happy with it or not? So that is one of the motivations of this project. If you now have a burning interest in co-creation, we do have a website, in the Institute website of the project. And here are some of the research questions. So how do people understand it is a big one. What agroecological principles are being brought into this understanding of co-creation? So you saw that the HLPE proposed 13 different principles of agroecology. One of them is soil health, for example. So you could ask yourself, how is co-creation of knowledge manifesting itself in soil health projects or research? How is context in political, ecological, and scale affecting how you can do co-creation? There was a really interesting presentation we saw about work on food security in the Northeast, and people had done individual interviews and surveys, and the question came up, how does that work at the community level, right? Like at a town level. Does it matter if people in the town have really strong relationships and basically share a lot of food? It probably does, right? And barriers and opportunities for co-creation of knowledge to happen. So the way we planned this was to work with our very close collaborator, the McKnight Foundation, in their program on global collaboration for resilient food systems, where they support 3 communities of practice in the South American Andes, including Bolivia, Ecuador, and Peru, in West Africa, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, and in East and Southern Africa, Kenya, Malawi, Tanzania, and Uganda. The funding from the McKnight Foundation goes towards research in agroecology in each one of these regions. And if you get funding, if you're like an NGO or a research center, you have the obligation to show up to a community of practice meeting every year. So all the grantees come together for a week, and there's a lot of co-learning, people collaborate and all that. So it's actually a really good space to inquire about co-creation. And there's been some hiccups. There's a lot of complexity in the world right now. But in the Andes, we were thinking about doing a case study in Bolivia with the Yapuchiris, and in Ecuador with the community of Caliata, where Amaya and Carlos Andres were both here, are working. In West Africa, we were going to work in Burkina Faso with a project run by Groundswell. All of these projects are focused on agroecology. And East Africa right now, it seems like it's going to be Kenya and Uganda. And these are existing projects that are saying they're doing co-creation, and we want to come in there in depth to work with them. I had already told you about the team, but here's the team again. You can see pictures. Colin's here now. So what are we doing in terms of research? So a big one is a knowledge review, which is, doing a typical scientific literature review, but also including some great literature. And so this has become a huge task with the inclusion of the great literature. And also, I believe, Gabriela, you're doing several languages. Yeah, so I'm participating, but I'm not leading it. And also the team got really eager on inviting a lot of different people who are great. They're great additions, but have a lot of new ideas. So it sounds like there might be 2 papers coming out of this knowledge review, which is all great. And we don't actually have a lot of resources. So I'm back at fundraising to, have another year and be able to pay some of these additional people, et cetera. The other thing we did was scoping workshops in the communities of practice. So in the Andes, West Africa, and East and South, we did a very similar exercise with them as we did with you, with the Mentimeter. And also we're going to do some interviews with regional key actors, and then these in-depth case studies, which ideally we would do some focus groups, interviews, one-on-one with people, and also a photo voice project where people are going to take pictures and describe why the picture that they took and how it relates to co-creation of knowledge. Is a methodology we've used before, and it works really well, especially for people that can't read or write or are not that comfortable interviewing. This is a way for them to show. So the scoping workshops were done, and this is what we've done so far. The rest we haven't engaged in. But we wanted to learn and share about how people understand co-creation, discuss the opportunities and challenges that they face if their projects are seeking to implement co-creation of knowledge, and learn from the experiences in other geographies. So one objective that is more related to impact is what lessons learned can we pull out for others that are interested in doing this in their work, in whatever field it is. Obviously more relevant to agroecology, but it could be for any other fields. So just to show you some of the results. So Gabriela was the one who led the workshop in West Af. So it is in French. But I think you can get a sense of the important things coming out of that. Gabi, how many people were in this one about?
About 80 people.
80. So this was the biggest one, I think, of the 3. Here's the one that Amaya, Carlos Andres, and I led in the Andes. It was in Ecuador in June. This one's in Spanish. So you can see, keep in mind what you're seeing, and maybe how different or similar they might be. And you can see sort of like the setting, it's very similar to what we're doing right now, is talking about it a little bit and then getting people to talk to each other. We did 2 rounds of discussion because very interested in what are the barriers or enabling environments in order to make co-creation happen. And this is the last one that Emily just did in Kenya this month. Again, with that community of practice of 4 countries in East and South. And she had 25. We must have had what? About 20 people. The one they did. A little more, 25 maybe. Yeah. One of the other things that we're doing is trying to bring back what we learned. So the idea is to do these research briefs, short, to the point, to share with people what came out of the scoping workshops. So Gabi diligently did hers in French, and it's really ready to be shared back with the community of practice. Because I don't know, maybe in West Staff, it was the entire group, but in both in Andes and in East and South Africa, it was a subgroup. So not everyone who attended the community of practice meeting was in the co-creation. Chicken on time. And then here's just give you a couple minutes to see how they compare. Right, so these are.
Can you state the prompt? What was the prompt for each?
The same one as the one we did here.
Okay.
Yeah, how do you understand co-creation? It was exactly the same, Mentimeter, 3 words, different language. It is different than the others. Where the others have collaboration at the center. Collaboration is here, but love it, listening, respect, humility. It's pretty cool. Okay, so what are our next steps and aspirations? So, you know, this is where we started officially this project in January. So we've done the 3 scoping things. We're working on the knowledge reviews. Now we're gonna go into a round of interviewing key regional actors, probably in Zoom. And again, drawing from those communities of practice and trying to bring diversity into it. So researchers, policymakers, farmers, not as much for this, because they're gonna be the focus of the in-depth case studies, right? So the idea is these case studies are going to the ground and asking those questions. Yeah. Synthesis and analysis, and like I said before, lessons learned are really important. What are we hoping to produce in terms of impact is knowledge outcomes for everybody, right? That we can just to support people in having a deeper reflection about what creation of knowledge is in agroecology. And one of the motivations that I had or reaffirmed doing this was I asked one of the people in one of those communities of practices about the project. And they told me, oh, everybody's already doing co-creation. And I found like, okay, great. Now I want to see how they're doing it and if it's similar or different. So that's how it's becoming. And then, you know, continuing to learn through sharing and discussing. So hopefully there's going to be several academic papers. We're going to ask farmers, like, what is it that they want? Because, you know, farmers have different things that they want. That picture over there is something that farmers like, which is like to get together and discuss things. Maybe that's what we do with farmers and when we're sharing the results. Policymakers don't like scientific papers usually, so maybe policy briefs or videos, and likewise with funders. Thank you very much.